A Hippo cheese factory doesn't exist as a normal dairy operation. Because hippos aren't domesticated, they're extremely dangerous at close range. And there's no reliable way to collect hippo milk daily in the volumes a cheese plant needs. So when you hear million-dollar hippo milk products, the only version that can actually scale is a high-tech substitute. A facility that recreates the functional chemistry of milk using controlled manufacturing, then runs standard cheese making on that engineered milk base. Cheese is not built from milk in a generic sense. It's built from a specific protein system. The core structure comes from casein micelles that coagulate under rennet and acidity, trapping fat and water into a gel. If you can supply the right casein proteins, the right mineral balance, and the right fat droplet structure, you can make curd that behaves like dairy curd. Even if no animal was milked at industrial scale, the process begins like a biotech plant, not a barn. The factory selects production strains, usually microbes designed to produce milk-identical proteins, especially caseins, because caseins are what rennet targets to form a firm gel. Those strains are stored as frozen master cell banks, and every production run starts from a verified vial to keep performance consistent and to prevent genetic drift that would change yield or purity. Next comes sterile fermentation, where the milk protein is grown rather than extracted. Stainless bioreactors run with automated control of temperature, pH, agitation, and dissolved oxygen, because protein output depends on metabolic stability. Feedstock is a refined sugar stream and nitrogen source, metered with mass flow control. Because overfeeding can cause unwanted byproducts and underfeeding reduces yield, extends cycle time. This is where the high-tech instrumentation matters. Off-gas analyzers track CO and oxygen uptake in real time as a proxy for microbial activity. And the control system adjusts aeration and agitation to maintain oxygen transfer without foaming. Foam isn't just messy. It can push microbes into filters and exhaust lines, so foam probes trigger anti-foam dosing and alarm states before a run destabilizes. When fermentation reaches its target, the broth is not milk. It's a mixture of protein, cells, salts, and residual nutrients that must be refined. Downstream processing starts with cell removal, typically via centrifugation or microfiltration. Cross-flow filtration is favored because the liquid runs tangentially across membranes, reducing clogging and allowing continuous operation after cells are removed. Ultrafiltration concentrates the proteins to a controlled solids level, and diafiltration washes out smaller molecules that cause off flavors, browning, or instability during heating. Membrane selection is engineered by molecular weight cutoff, because the plant wants to keep target proteins while flushing out salts and fermentation residues. Pressure, temperature, and flow are tightly controlled because excessive shear or heat can partially denature proteins and change how they coagulate later. Purity is where the luxury price narrative actually comes from, because higher purity means more unit operations. Ion exchange can reduce ash and ionic contaminants that interfere with rennet said. Activated carbon can strip color bodies and odor active compounds that would make the final product smell fermented instead of clean and dairy-like. Each polishing step is monitored with conductivity, UV absorbance, and sensory screening, because trace impurities that are invisible in a tank become obvious in a finished cheese. Protein alone won't produce a rich cheese, so the plant engineers fat as a second subsystem. Real milk fat exists as globules, with a membrane that affects stability and mouthfeel. And any reconstructed milk has to mimic that behavior. Depending on product positioning and regulations, fat may come from dairy fat, plant oils, or fermentation-derived lipids. But in all cases, it's emulsified under high-pressure homogenization to achieve a target. Droplet size distribution, homogenization is not just blending, it's controlled fluid mechanics. The fat phase is forced through a narrow valve at high pressure, breaking droplets into smaller ones. And the number of passes determines how narrow the size distribution becomes. Smaller droplets increase stability and create a smoother body, but they can also change flavor release and how the curd traps fat. So pressure settings are treated like recipe parameters with tight tolerances. Now the factory builds. It's a standardized milk base in blending tanks. Load cells and mass flow meters dose purified proteins, fat emulsion, lactose, or a fermentable sugar equivalent, and minerals. Minerals are critical because calcium and phosphate balance govern curd firmness. Too much ionic calcium can cause rapid, brittle coagulation, while too little makes weak curd that fractures into fines and loses yield. Inline pH density and refractometer readings. Verify consistency before the batch is cleared for cheese making. Safety and stability require heat treatment, because once the base leaves sterile fermentation and enters food processing, It faces normal environmental contamination risks. Plate heat exchangers run high-temperature short-time pasteurization. And an automated diversion valve rejects any flow that fails time-temperature requirements. This step also conditions proteins because heating changes hydration and can subtly shift gel strength. So the thermal profile is validated for both safety and texture. Cheesemaking starts with controlled acidification. Starter cultures are chosen for acid speed, flavor profile, and compatibility with the engineered protein system, because different casein ratios and mineral balances change how quickly pH drops and how the gel contracts. Temperature control in the vat is tight because culture activity and enzyme action both scale with temperature. And small drift shows up as inconsistent moisture and slice behavior later. Rennet addition is followed by real-time gel monitoring. It's not manual guesswork. Modern plants can use optical, vibrational, torque-based sensors to track the onset of coagulation and the rate of firmness development. That data defines the exact cut time. And cut time matters because it sets the moisture baseline. Cutting earlier retains more water for a softer cheese, and cutting later produces a drier, firmer curd. Cutting is engineered surface area control. Automated knife frames cut the gel into uniform cubes, and the cube size controls whey release by changing total surface area. Stirring then manages syneresis, the curd's natural whey expulsion. And the plant uses programmed agitation to firm curd particles without creating excessive fines that reduce yield and create gritty defects. Cooking the curd is a temperature ramp, not heating it up. The ramp rate changes how fast proteins tighten and how quickly whey leaves the matrix. A slow ramp preserves a more open structure and higher moisture, while a faster ramp drives firmer texture and higher solids. In a premium product, the factory uses repeatable profiles logged by PLC, so each batch matches the target texture window. Whey separation is done with screens and draining. Tables designed to protect curd integrity. In high-throughput systems, curd can be conveyed into molds with minimal free fall, because drops fracture curd grains and create mechanical openings that later weep liquid. Mold geometry and turning schedules are designed to equalize drainage, so the cheese doesn't develop wet cores and dry edges. Pressing is pressure time engineering. Too little pressure leaves trapped whey that can ferment unpredictably and cause gas defects, while too much pressure collapses structure and produces a rubbery bite. Automated presses apply, stage pressure curves, and the plant tracks press outcomes through weight loss and moisture testing to keep the process centered. Salting is a diffusion-controlled preservation step. Brine systems are common at scale, but brine is a living system that can become a contamination reservoir if unmanaged. So the factory filters brine, monitors salt concentration by conductivity, controls temperature to stabilize diffusion, and applies sanitation strategies like UV treatment or periodic pasteurization depending on the design. Salt controls water activity, regulates enzyme activity during aging, and sets the flavor baseline. So brining time is tied to wheel mass and measured moisture. Not just a clock. Aging is where the cheese becomes expensive, because time, space, and climate control costs money. Ripening rooms operate like industrial climate chambers. Temperature, humidity, and airflow are managed to control moisture migration and microbial development. Airflow is engineered to prevent condensation, because condensation creates localized wet surfaces that invite unwanted molds and smear bacteria that can dominate a rind. Asterisk flavor development is monitored as chemistry. Proteolysis breaks caseins into peptides and amino acids, changing texture from firm to creamy and building savory notes. Lipolysis and oxidation pathways influence aroma. Also, oxygen exposure is controlled through rind management and packaging strategy. If the product is positioned as ultra-premium, plant may run longer aging with tighter humidity control to hit a specific firmness and flavor intensity, without excessive weight loss. Packaging is designed around oxygen and moisture transmission, not just appearance. Vacuum packs reduce oxygen but can deform soft cheeses and create a dense mouthfeel. So many premium products use films with tuned permeability that let the cheese breathe at a controlled rate. Modified atmosphere packaging adjusts CO and nitrogen levels to slow microbial growth and protect flavor. In headspace, oxygen is verified in line because oxygen drift predicts premature browning and off-dash aromas, because the entire idea is built on credibility. Quality control is continuous and instrumented. Protein composition and purity are checked upstream because small shifts change rennet response. Melt flow and viscosity proxies are used where relevant because they correlate to texture and slice performance. Finished product is tested for pH, moisture, salt, water activity, and microbiological limits. And environmental monitoring focuses on post-lethality zones where contamination would bypass all the upstream controls. Traceability is what makes the operation industrial rather than experimental. Every lot links back to the exact fermentation batch, filtration membrane run, blending tank recipe, pasteurization chart, vat parameters, press curve, and ripening room history. When defects occur, bitterness, weak set. Color drift, the plant can isolate whether the cause was protein purity, mineral dosing, culture kinetics, or aging conditions. Then correct it with a parameter change instead of trial and error. If anyone actually attempted real hippo milk collection, the limiting factor wouldn't be cheesemaking technology. It would be safe, ethical, legal, animal handling, and the impossibility of consistent volume. Low-volume milk cannot be economically standardized, cannot be pooled to average variability, and would face extreme regulatory scrutiny for food safety. That reality is why the only scalable hippo milk product story is a high-tech recreation of milk functionality, built on controlled fermentation, precision separation, and tightly monitored cheesemaking. So the real Hippo Cheese Factory is not a place where hippos are milked. It's a place where milk chemistry is manufactured. It's a production chain that replaces animal variability with sensors, sterile reactors, membrane filtration, homogenization, physics, and data-logged ripening control to produce a consistent, premium cheese-style product that can be packaged, shipped, and sold at global scale.